welcome back to the Purpose Department podcast. And today we have a very special guest, our friend Jesus.
What's going on, Jesus? How you doing, man?
I'm doing good.
Good.
Dude, it's so great to see you, man.
How you doing, Jay?
Good.
This is a nice early morning we got going on here. We got the
It's
coffee
currently
going.
9:26 a.m.
Pacific time.
Yes.
So, hey, once again, we want to welcome you guys to the Purpose Department podcast. And this is an opportunity where Jaiden and I come together, and we've got so many good friends, some great people, awesome stories. And we carve out some time to really step into what we call the Purpose Department. And it's all about talking about challenges, growth, stepping out in faith, all these different things. And today, I got to talk with my good friend Jesus, and was like, hey, bro, I want to invite you, have you come on here. And Jesus, we go back, at least 3 years, I feel like, at least.
2021.
Something like that, yeah. I feel like it's almost kind of like...
so short. Man, it's like 2021. It's like, oh yeah, no, that was like yesterday, right?
Exactly.
A whole lot of life has happened since then. I mean, I feel it's kind of like Cool Runnings with Sanka and stuff. We've been through a whole heap, man,
Yeah.
And I don't know if you guys have watched Cool Runnings. Great movie. Absolutely love it. But bro, I appreciate your friendship, and it's been awesome, but yet crazy to think about all of the different challenges, the different things that you've had to go through, kind of even what life looks like now.
Exactly.
Jesus is also big with music. He's a great songwriter, has produced some great music, and absolutely love it. I know you've got some new stuff in the works as well. So
Exactly.
You want to tell us just a little bit about you, kind of where you're at, all these different things. So
Yeah, definitely. So, I mean, of course, we've had a chance to chop a little bit, but, I love music. I'm all about music. Had some projects and things like that, just kind of been dormant for a little bit of time, only because of some recent situations that have been kind of on the forefront. But the blessing is that God's been just speaking to my heart and just really just putting me back into the right mindset of saying that, look, the time is now. It's always now, and that's why you're here, right? We're talking about purpose. And the reason why I'm here is I have these gifts, I have these talents, I have these abilities, and every day I should be exercising them. I should be investing into them to be more so that I can do more and be more for him.
Yeah.
In my life. So now I'm back into the grind, like starting to write a lot more, getting into it. I've got a good friend of mine who's all about jumping into a podcast as well too.
Sweet.
And just really being expressive in the very things that I feel like God's kind of taken me through this journey of learning and understanding in life, and being better in our walk with Him and our walk with each other. Yeah,
That's so cool.
So before we get more into this episode, I have a question for you.
Yeah.
So, oh man, this is going to be a hard one. So, here's what's going to happen. You get 1 year to either be stuck on a island out in the Pacific Ocean, or you are stuck in a lost civilization, like back in time. Okay. So you have to choose one or the other, and then I'll tell you more of the question after. So do you want to be stuck in an ancient civilization, or do you want to be stuck in a island in the Pacific Ocean?
An island in the
Pacific Ocean.
Yes.
So you get stuck on this island in the Pacific Ocean. You can only take 3 things with you. And these 3 things cannot include a phone or any sort of electronic device.
Okay.
So that's just like the only parameters. So what 3 items would you take with you on this island?
I would take the Bible.
Okay.
To be in the Word. I would take a guitar. And I'd probably take a knife.
It's pretty good. Yeah. Okay, cool. That was my question. That was my question.
Yes.
Every episode, he's always asking one of our guests just I never know where the question's gonna go. So
Okay.
That one was one of my more simple ones. I'm a little bit tired, so I couldn't think of a hard one.
Yeah, he's asked.
Damn.
So good. So with that, I guess what I wanted to talk to you about today, Jesus, and ask you some questions and stuff as well was, here on the Purpose Department podcast, we want to help everyone who's watching, who's listening. First off, leave us a like, comment, give us a subscribe, all those different things. We're trying to release these things about every week.
Yeah.
And it's been so good. But in that, I know for you, Jesus, like when we first met, I remember we were out near a donut shop right here in Irvine near the airport, hanging out. It was late.
Yeah.
And then we were just talking about knowledge, and we were talking about music.
Yeah.
And, for us as well, like worship and kind of what that meant a little bit. And all throughout my time of knowing you, I've always admired the time that you set aside and the priority that you've put into wanting to learn, to gain understanding and to gain knowledge. And that's what I wanted to talk about today. So this idea about knowledge and how does knowledge help play into purpose?
Yeah. Oh man. That's great. So I mean, it's a beautiful thing, I think, because I think when I think of knowledge, I think of development.
Yeah.
I think I go right back to you come out of the womb, and like you're constantly receiving knowledge of, what things mean all around you, and you're exploring, as a baby. And then you're also hearing, through all the different senses that we have, right? We're like receiving information and growing and learning, from our surroundings. And so I feel like knowledge has so much to do with our purpose, just because at the end of the day, like there's this, at least for me, there's this delight of learning and understanding something and feeling like even that is a process in and of itself. It's like you're going through this process of gathering this information and then something clicks where it actually makes sense, and like it's such a beautiful place to get to that because, as you start learning more and more as you grow, you realize it doesn't always happen that way. It's not always that fast or that instant. Sometimes you start learning or reading about something and it's like still not clicking. I don't really know what's going on here still, And so many people have those moments, where it's like, how come I don't like grab that understanding as fast with this as I may do it with that, but I love being able to break the barrier of getting to that place, in those things. So like even with science, I feel like just everything is tied into the very way something is designed has a lot to do with its purpose.
That's good.
And like, we have, like, for instance, trees are designed a certain way and they give off oxygen, right? And they convert carbon dioxide. It's like we give out, we exhale carbon dioxide, like,
So
that's a beautiful thing,
it's kind of cool because it's like whenever people are like, yeah, no, they just evolved like that. Trees just evolved to start making oxygen.
Yeah, right? It's like,
How does that work? I'm like, so if we exhale carbon dioxide, did our brains go like, oh, we have to change how we breathe now in order to help the trees grow?
Yeah, exactly.
I don't think that's really what happened.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, like, we didn't really have a say in that either because we didn't put this together,
Yeah.
which is pretty cool. So it just says that it helps you realize those aspects, like in order to procreate, right? You got to have certain things in place.
Yeah.
It's just a beautiful thing to understand. Like as you start to explore, you see the framework of things, like the distance the sun is, from the planet, the angle and the axis that the planet is at, like just understanding that that's all designed for sure, because we realize that if it was different, it wouldn't work. So like that helps you understand, like it actually has to be that way. You can't do it a different way. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
And it's the same thing, like with our bodies, with our organs, with our skeletal system, with our sensory, like all the things that come. Like if something's off with those things, then it says like, oh man, so it actually has to be like that, which then indirectly says that's its purpose.
Yeah.
Its purpose is that's another avenue of receiving information or understanding something. So I love science. I love everything that I can learn, and even people too. Like that's the beautiful thing too, like sociology, like how we connect, how we enjoy certain experiences,
Right.
and what fruits and vegetables that you like and you don't like, and it's cool because at the same time it's like, yeah, man, like when I ate that, I didn't feel like that was good too, like I stay away from that. But sometimes you're like, oh man, but yeah, that was so good, and how that allows us to bond and connect with each other.
Yeah.
Because we have those experiences just from something as simple as that.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I just think like all of that still has purpose.
Mm-hmm.
It has something that we're able to offer each other.
Yeah.
And it gives more meaning and depth. And I think the way the enemy works is he wants to remove purpose as far as he can from every type of scene or setting.
Yeah.
Because then it's almost like it's just meaningless. It's just this. It's just that.
And I think that's the biggest part of it. The whole idea, like in Ecclesiastes, it talks about the writer of Ecclesiastes is always pondering this question. Is life meaningless? Like, what's the whole idea? And I don't know. I mean, I've gone through moments in my life where I felt like, what's the point? Or why am I even doing this?
Exactly.
And in some ways, right, we can gain so much knowledge, and I think knowledge gives us a great framework to understand, kind of like what you were talking about with the skeletal system and how our bodies operate. Knowledge helps give us a good framework, yet we've got to do something with that knowledge.
Exactly.
And it's just like, I think of creativity. When I run into dry seasons, or I feel like I've just hit a wall, what do I need to do? I need to go back and start gaining knowledge, learning something new. So then what happens? Then I can start applying it. Then I can start actually doing something with it. And so I do think there are two sides of the coin when it comes to knowledge and action.
Yes, exactly.
And so, I mean, what do you think about that whole idea with the knowledge and action and stuff like that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the focus is that you go to attain knowledge to have a better understanding of what something is or what is around you. And from there, you should act on that to say, okay, now that I know, for instance, I have this knowledge of gravity, I can act in accordance with that knowledge of knowing that if I jump from a certain height, this is what's going to happen. You know what I mean? Like, right. So it's like, it's being able to, from that knowledge, say, now let me appropriate myself on how I'm going to use that knowledge and how I'm going to allow that knowledge to allow me to get more knowledge. And all of that, like you said, it's really building a framework of things to do or probably not to do, and it gives the rules and the boundaries. And I feel like everything has rules and boundaries. It's also the reason why I feel like when people say that you can be successful doing anything, that's not true, because there are certain things you cannot be successful doing. And there are certain things where you say you could be anything, you can't really be anything, because there are certain rules and boundaries, but doesn't mean that you can excel at an extraordinary, amazing level. It just means that you have to find the boundaries and the rules of what's going to help you function and operate at that high level. And it just takes understanding that. So I think that it's more so like the more knowledge you get, the more understanding you have on how you should apply that knowledge and how you can get more knowledge. And that's why I love with Proverbs where it says like a wise man, gains wisdom. And then it says in all of your getting, get understanding. And it's a person who's like a wise man is always going to get knowledge. A wise man is always going to welcome correction.
Right.
Because it's only going to give him more knowledge.
Yeah.
So like, it's like, okay, if you tell me that's wrong, now I have more knowledge. If you say that, make adjustments here, that's giving me something that I didn't have before. So I welcome that all the time, right? Because that's only going to help me personally improve.
That's why mess ups are like so powerful.
Yeah, right.
It's not like to the point where it's like you're messing up every single time. If you're messing up every single time, then something's wrong. Like, really. It's kind of like what I talked about a couple episodes ago. Like, if you're not excelling in something, then you should not quit, but you should try to go find something else. Because that's clearly not your field. It's clearly not what you're supposed to be doing.
Exactly.
So, like, go and try to find something else. But that's also why, like, momentary mess ups are so powerful. It's like, oh, hey, I can learn from that. That's also why I'm fascinated with history.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, oh, wow. So I see that that's how that powerful nation fell. I'm like, so that's how Rome fell.
Yeah.
That's how Greece kind of just went off to the side.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, that's how the Germanic tribes just like destroyed themselves from within and then built themselves back up again.
Yeah.
It's kind of like I can see those patterns and I can be like, oh, okay, so from their mess ups, I'm learning that this is what's going to happen or this is what's possibly going to happen. And it just expands your knowledge so much more.
Yeah, dude. And I love how you said patterns, you know. I think it's really about patterns. It's so funny how like even math, for instance, is almost a practical real world experience because you look at different patterns, you know, and you're looking at things that contrast. Or does that really add up? Am I seeing the same frequency or distance or whatever's going on, right? And so, and we do that with each other though. It's just another way of analyzing the very things around us, you know. Say, hey, does this person really have credibility? Look at the history, look at the pattern of what they're doing here, right? Like it's a beautiful thing because all of those things help equip us to just better understand the world around us and position ourselves, because I think that's really the biggest component is everything that we're doing is really positioning ourselves.
Yeah.
You know? We're really putting ourselves in a position to either be able to do more or maybe not do as much,
right?
You know, and so it's like, what are you going to do with your life?
Yeah.
And how are you going to continue to position yourself to be and to do what you really feel like God's called you to do?
Yeah, I think that's so powerful because I do find that the more that I learn and then the more that I begin to understand, I do understand, oh, these are some of my boundaries.
Yeah.
These are some of the things. So we're talking about knowledge can help pour into like my own convictions, my own values, my own priorities, what I deem as important or who, you know, I feel is important and integral in my life and all those different things. But then also the more that I grow and the more that I learn, ultimately it does reflect onto the inside of who I really am and how I really think and what my mental process is and all of the different limitations that maybe I've grabbed onto.
Yeah.
You know, what are the negative things that I've allowed to become so loud in my life that now I've replaced all of what, you know, the good things, the knowledge that is supposed to help me to progress, to move forward, to be better today than what I was yesterday.
Yeah.
But now I've allowed some of these negative things to almost become the truth in my life and different things. I love how, I think it's in 1 Peter 2 where it talks about, for this very reason, he's saying, make every effort to have faith.
Yes.
And then with your faith, then have goodness. And then with your goodness, have knowledge.
Yes.
And then the knowledge leads to self-control. And then self-control then leads to perseverance. And he goes through all this different stuff. And in a lot of ways, I feel that sometimes we get stuck on some of those things, you know?
Yeah. Oh, man. Faith is so foundational. It really is. And I think it's cool, too, because, like, there's this saying that Paul says a lot of times, and he'll say, see it that way, or see it this way, you know? And he's basically saying that this is the way you have to approach it.
Yeah.
And it's not an emotional thing. It's just a decision thing. And that's the one thing I really love about God is God, you know, especially wisdom. Wisdom has nothing to do with how we feel. Wisdom has everything to do with the outcome.
Yeah.
And why you're going to do that or make that decision, because it's going to give you a certain outcome. And so once you realize like, hey man, if I do this, that leads to destruction, I'm going to make a solid decision not to do that, regardless of how.
That's what we hope.
Yeah. But it's understanding like, no, you have to train yourself, which is the whole reason why we're disciples, because disciplined individuals will always succeed and excel. And everything is about discipline. It has nothing like our emotions. Unfortunately, the enemy just really usurps our emotions so often and allows that to dictate and control what we do. But if we're able to really like withdraw from our emotions and really just allow our emotions to kind of like probably just help us understand like the situation, you know, because that's the beauty about emotions. Your emotions will always tell you that's the temperature of whatever's going on, because you feel that way. You're already thinking that way. Like, it's so natural. But then it's like, okay, shift things up. If you have this a negative feeling or emotion because of whatever's going on, that's indirectly, it's kind of like alerting you to say, hey man, switch it up, because you don't want that. We don't want that, you know? And so like in this case, it's like our discipline and our decisions give us that, allow us to understand that, saying, if we want a certain outcome, we make that decision. And if we want to put, like, for instance, the knowledge, right? We talked about knowledge. It's a clear fact that you can get yourself into the habit of doing things after a certain amount of time. So like, you can discipline yourself. Your body is going to automatically do and operate with the habitual state.
Yeah.
Once it gets into a certain habit, it's going to do that very naturally. Mm-hmm. So you could be very intentional with disciplining yourself to get yourself into good habits that by default you don't really have to be too mindful of. Mm-hmm. And so you're indirectly saying, hey, let me make myself a slave to righteousness.
That's fine.
By training myself and disciplining myself to be like, no man, like, if you just stay consistent enough, that's, the body's going to do what it already needs to do, because you put itself into a habit of doing that, you know? So like, we could do those type of things. So that's why I love knowledge, and I love wisdom, and I love all those things about it, because it really helps you say, how can I really better position myself and my family and our community into really setting ourselves up to have the best life? And God shows that and demonstrates that and helps us, you know, and saying, hey, do it like this. Mm-hmm. And so that's why I think it's so important for us to like see it this way, you know, like right. Paul says, hey, see it that way. If you see it that way, then now you know, hey man, like, I don't care how I feel, that's not good. And I tell myself, well, I that's exactly what I do all the time. Yeah. I may have emotions or things come my way, be like, and you know, the body or the flesh may be like, oh, that looks good. And you're like, no, that doesn't look good. And I'll tell myself, no, that actually doesn't look good. And you don't even want that. And you don't like that. And I do with food sometimes, do with things or situations. I'm like,
food is hard.
I'm like,
that's
true.
true.
No,
right?
You don't really want that.
Yeah.
No, that's actually not good for you. You know, like, hey, that's, I just, even though I feel that and I think that because of the pleasure and the delight that thing brings to our body, a lot of times I'll just correct myself and be like, no, you don't want that. That's just, you know. So,
yeah, that's like really cool. It's like building a habit, and then whenever you build habits, temptations are always gonna come along, or like things that want to mess up that habit. So you have to like use your knowledge that you've gained, and it's really important to gain knowledge, which I think that some people just skip out on. Yeah. They're like, oh yeah, no, I did this, I have my master's in this, I got this kind of degree. And then they end up falling for certain things because they don't study more. Because they think that they've already completed life, and they think that they're just going to get to live it out now. And that's like, no, you still need to build a new habit. You still need to break off some of the old things, because you're never going to be perfect. But you can always strive for perfection. You can always strive to become better. So you have to like strive to make new habits, right? Mm-hmm.
Well, what's interesting too is when we're talking about faith, it's like, I feel like a lot of times people misunderstand faith. So, but faith is really just your belief, your solid belief system. And it's to the core aspect of you, to where it's like, faith is really not something that we say, I have faith. Like you were saying, faith is the reality of who you are and what you believe, because you act on that.
It's the overflow.
Yeah.
It has to come out.
Yeah, exactly. Right. And so that's why faith is so important to be the foundation before anything else. Yeah. Because if you don't have that, then how can you really, how do you, it's like you're practicing something, but the reason why we practice it is because of the outcome. Yeah. We know that this is going to give us the best outcome. Why? Because it's God's way, and God designed everything. So like, he's saying, hey, do it like this, and it's going to be amazing. Yeah. We just have to believe him to know, like, no, really, like, it's really going to be just like that. You just have to believe him. Once you believe him, you're just going to follow suit. Like, I will trust you to the end. Yeah. You know, just like with our parents, you know, it's like, oh yeah. Like once some kids believe their parents so wholeheartedly, especially in the early beginnings.
Yeah.
Before any flaws ever came out, and they experienced, and before they gained things, but like they just like, you telling me it, like I'm doing it. Wherever you say, whatever you say, that's what it is.
Yeah.
And so like that's how we really need to be with God.
Yeah.
Especially because He's never going to let us down. He's never going to steer us the wrong way. So, we develop those relationships earlier on, but I think sometimes as human beings, like we're very skeptical to trust because of encountering people who are flawed. And we do that with God, like He's another person.
Yeah.
But we really have to be like, no. This is God though.
Yeah.
You can 100% wholeheartedly trust Him with everything you have. And everything He says you can do and follow, and you're always gonna get the best results. You're never gonna be led astray.
And I think that's really good, because when I look at it as when God enters into the picture, right? So we're talking about faith, and then the other side of the coin, knowledge.
Yeah.
For those of us who have come to a place, like for like the three of us in this room, where God is now the new foundation. All of us, if we're left to our own demise, if we're left to our own mental thoughts and our own preferences and our own desires and temptations, all these different things, we're already operating at a deficit.
Yeah.
But and I've seen it to where we're operating in a deficit, and then there are some of us, we've tried to live out a life of purpose and take advantage of opportunities or to find meaning and identity. And we have all this faith, but yet we're still at a deficit.
Yeah.
And then I can see that there are some of us where we gain all of this knowledge, but yet we still haven't gotten to the surface yet. So in my mind, I see when God enters into the picture and helps kind of restore and reframe things for us, now we have a new baseline. Yeah. So no longer are we under the surface anymore, but then because of who He is, He brings us to the top. Yeah. And now when we start living on His baseline and what He's established and what He's created, then we're able to apply faith and knowledge. And then as life begins to go up and down and you're starting to hit all these different things, you're no longer operating underneath the surface anymore in the deficit. But now you're able to live it out and figure out, how does this work? Because there are certain times in life where my faith is really good, but yet I'm not filling the tank with knowledge. I'm not filling the tank with His word. I'm not filling the tank with stepping out of my comfort zone to grow and become a better person, or to grow in my skills. And then there's the other times where I'm growing in my skills, but then I'm so tired and worn out that I don't want to apply what I've learned because I don't have the mental capacity anymore. So how do you, Jesus, because you even said it earlier where, you've navigated some toughness and, you had to kind of put some of the music stuff aside, but now you feel like, okay, things are going back and starting to rev up. Like, how do you go through those ebb and flows,
Yeah. I think now I feel like it's all about, what is this for? I think when we see purpose, then we have a sense of rest and we have a sense of comfort and relief, because we can see the purpose of what's going on or why that's happening. And so when we don't see the purpose of something, that's where it's really challenging to accept it and even embrace it and be able to walk through and navigate that thing, because we're like, what is going on here? And I think that's where, for me, it's understanding that there is still purpose in it. And it's being able to see that, hey, I didn't have control over the situation. So God has a purpose still, though.
Yeah.
God still has a plan. And that means there is a way to navigate through this situation. And God knew that. And so as a result of that, He has a purpose with this that I need to see. And that's kind of what it is. It's like, it's me understanding that either I need to see something, or the situation that's going on, the purpose of it is it's just a distraction. And I'm not going to give it my attention. So it's like, it's either one or the other, and that's kind of what's helped me, navigate and go through, is because of just realizing that, hey, this is either I need to get my head on straight. God is so in control, then I'm good. So if this is happening, I
Right.
need to allow him to navigate me through this situation and still stay focused with what am I to do now. And if it means do something with that, do something with it. If it's just a distraction, it's just a distraction. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But like,
Yeah.
but that's helped me navigate through that and being able to see, because that's really what it is. Like you said, you can get all that knowledge, you can get all those things, but it's like, but what's the purpose of all that? And our faith really helps us see purpose in everything.
Yeah.
And it really helps us see that no matter even how outlandish, it's still, there's the purpose there. God's still doing something.
Yeah.
In the Bible, doesn't it say, like, going back to faith, like, doesn't it say have faith like a child?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So that, like, I think at times, like, we overthink things.
Yeah.
Like, even us, like, whenever we, like, give ourselves knowledge, like, whenever we strive for knowledge, we overthink things because we know so much, or, like, we think that we know so much, that we end up stop enjoying life.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of like have faith like a child.
Yeah.
So that your life can be better. Like, just look at the world simplistically and don't look at all of its faults, so that you can just be happier and just not be so, like, stuck in the ground of just like, this is where I stand and I'm not going to move unless something moves me.
Yeah.
Like, just go with the flow, but then still try to be your own.
Yeah. I think that when it comes to faith and knowledge, there's this one saying where I've heard before, and I'll probably end up butchering it, but it's this idea that faith never knows where it's actually going or where it's being led, but it loves the one who's leading.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
And I think about that for all of us. You know, there's that idea of how do you get both sides of the coin to really coexist together, and ultimately give you that foundation to stand on, to where you can keep moving forward, where you can keep enjoying life.
Yeah.
You know, it breaks my heart when I come across people who have been kind of had the wind taken out of their sails, or because of the adversity that they've had to face, the challenges, right? I always say, no, it's not a challenge. I got to find an opportunity. I have to reframe it, because that helps my knowledge. Because my knowledge, when it's not planted in the right thing, will take you down super fast.
Yeah.
You know, and so I have to have that faith in the who and love and the one that's leading.
Yeah.
You know, what does that look like for you guys?
I mean, that just reminds me of, you know, the Lord's Prayer, you know, lead us not into temptation, deliver us from evil. You know, it's just, like you said, loves the one that's leading them, knowing that the one that's leading them loves them to the extent that he wouldn't lead them into something bad.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And so if I'm on this journey, it's not going anywhere to my demise, regardless of how crazy the storm is.
Right.
And I think that's really kind of how that it should register within us to say, look, no matter how crazy it's getting, it's going to be okay. Why? Because he's leading, and he's involved. He's a part of your life. He loves you, you know, and that's where you have to kind of refocus back on what the word says, you know.
Yeah.
Hey, my sheep hear my voice. You know, like, you have to go back to the scripture and say, okay, well, God, you said, I hear your voice. I'm your sheep. Like, that means if you're going to speak, I'm going to be able to hear it, you know. And so I thank you that you know how to get my attention. You know, like, it's not that hard for you. You know, like, but I mean, sometimes we could feel that way and we can think that way. And that's where we have to get back to the knowledge, right?
Mm-hmm.
The knowledge is, yeah, but what did God really say?
Yeah.
What does God say about that? I love how you mentioned, like, a child, where you said no faults, you know, and I honestly think that that's probably the most characteristic aspect of a child, is that they don't really see faults. It's like when you're a kid and when you're a child, you're not focused on focusing on faults, and you don't really like hold on to it or capture it to the same extent. It's almost like children just almost like they forget. You know, like, yeah, it happened, the moment happened, but they don't really hold on to it to the same extent.
I've noticed that, like, as I've gotten older, I've, like, noticed that I'm starting to see more. I'm starting to be like, oh, like, that's what's happening in the world. But when I was younger, I was like, oh, that's cool. Look at that.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'd forget about it like five minutes later.
Yeah.
But now it's like I see every little detail, I hear every little thing, and that just takes my joy. So whenever I like have those moments, I remember I went to a Kona riders camp, circuit riders camp, and there God told me to stop focusing on the details. There God told me to like stop focusing on the nitty gritty of everything. And so like I've had those moments again where I'm like, oh man, look at that. It's like all the details. It's like cluttering up my mind, just stealing my joy. And then I hear that little voice again, and it's like, stop focusing on the details. Faith like a child. It's like it's all gonna work out.
Yeah, how do you, Jesus, I guess, when you're going through life, there is a point where your faith almost seems to contradict what you know. So your faith is like, but I know because this is what I've seen. This is part of maybe what I've experienced, right? Because for a good majority of us, I know sometimes that adds to my discernment, but that sometimes can also get me to focus on the wrong things because I look at what I feel like I understand and what I know.
Yeah.
But yet my faith is telling me, no, this is what you've got to do.
Exactly.
So how do you push through? Because I do feel like there is that wall and there's a breaking point that each of us goes through in different moments in life.
I mean, I kind of look at it like faith for me personally starts where I don't know. Like that's kind of how I see my faith come into play.
Yeah.
I think that the fact that we seek knowledge and get knowledge, then I think also at the same time, like God gave us our brains and he gave us this ability to learn and grow and develop. And the capacity of our brains are being at like high, crazy levels. Imagine if we were all in faith in the King, like everybody was like in God, in Christ. Like our intellects would be freaking out. Because we're so tight. We're so like connected to him and connected to how he intended us to be.
Yeah.
And in that flow, right, where there's no limits and there's not all these things, like you said, that we get distracted with that indirectly kind of like don't help us and aid us into really like reaching our full potential. So like with me, it's a matter of like understanding that knowledge and wisdom are principal things.
Yeah.
And I always feel like God would want us to be wise and to operate in that sense. And whenever I don't see how, or whenever those things seem to blend or merge and it's not 100% clear, that's when my faith comes in.
Yeah.
My faith, and many times I'll just say, let me exercise faith when I don't have 100% surety on how I should really approach the situation, what I should really do, what's really going on. But if I have that peace or that comfortability of this is how I see it, I'm going to exercise that wisdom in that regard, right? Because I'm going to say, I'm going to believe that God gave me that wisdom also to be able to handle the situation when it comes.
I think it's also kind of, as you're saying that, it brings to my mind too the idea, the difference of, for some of us, we'll get so pulled or we'll gravitate towards wanting to understand more so that we can then believe. But in reality, when it comes to our faith, when it comes to life and living above the surface, like getting out of the being in the deficit, but with what God wants, he desires for us to believe, which then will lead us to then understand.
Exactly. Yeah.
And that's where I think about the disciples in the New Testament, and they're where Jesus, and they're like, well, they're like doubting Thomas. Like for the several disciples, they believed Jesus is raised from the dead. He's resurrected. He's not in the tomb, and it's just like, wow, what in the world is going on? But their faith and their curiosity is uncontained right now. It's uncontrollable. But then you had doubting Thomas who's like, well, I need to see it first in order to believe it. Yeah. When in reality, living out this whole idea of faith and knowledge, there has to be a belief, a hope that doesn't come from us.
Exactly.
It has to be planted within us So then it then brings understanding.
Exactly.
How do you think that like you have people that are like doubting Thomas, where they're like, I need to see the facts. I don't believe anything unless I see it with my own two eyes, or unless I see a graph chart that states how this is true.
Mm-hmm.
How would you like tell people how to fix that, or just how to like grow so that they don't always just need to be like, I need to see that, I need to see this, and I need to see this in order to know it's true?
Whatever, and this is the whenever people do that, and I find it interesting, I think at the end of the day, it's not that. It's about, you have to go out and you have to discover and you have to figure it out on your own. Because if you really want something, you have to be about it. And people like that, they really just want things handed to them. But in life, it's like, you don't just get handed truth. You don't just get handed knowledge. You don't just get handed skill. Like, you have to be about that, And so, like, it's this whole concept that if you want that, you have to literally go after that.
Yeah.
You're never going to get something that you're not going after. And so this comes back to the knowledge thing. Like, seek the knowledge and see how things just so systematically work so well. When you just start discovering and looking at just the beautiful world around us, you're going to say, man, that's beautiful how that works. And then you're going to have to say, is it a coincidence? Did that really happen by accident? Because an accident would imply that there's no real structure and design to something. Like, if I just accidentally drop water, you know what I mean? Accidentally do something, you're not going to see like thought and process in how that puddle is on the ground. And you know what I mean? You're just going to see a puddle.
Instinct to...
You're not going to see any information. You're not going to see any thought behind it. And that literally tells you that was an accident. Why? There was no thought process behind that thing. There's no framework. There's nothing to put that together that would even make sense. But the fact that I can look at something and see the structure, and it's got this in place and that in place, means that was definitely intentionally put together. Because look at how it's designed. Look at how it comes together. There's no way that would be an accident.
Yeah.
And I think that's why it's like, hey, just look at aspects of our lives. Look at the human body. Look at how we're made. Look at how our systems are structured. Look at all the different systems. Look at like the world around us. Look at animals. Look at how they all cohesively work together. Look at the food chain on how all of that works the way that it does.
Yeah.
So it's like, you just see all that organization, you see all that structure, all that design. You're like, yeah, it's not an accident for sure, because we all work so well together. So I think that's cool.
And that's where I feel that curiosity plays a huge part in that.
Yeah.
Because I've known people who, especially in our faith context and our relationship with God, and I've known people who they acquired knowledge, like they drank it all in.
Yeah.
But it didn't do anything. They were still lost, still searching.
Yeah.
I even think of the Pharisees from the New Testament and the Bible times, where these guys were full of knowledge. Yeah. They knew the Torah, they knew all of these different things, they studied, yet there was a disconnect because they didn't have the curiosity. It was so much, everything was so grounded on what they knew that the faith aspect of it, to help them break outside of the construct or the box that they created, kept them trapped. And like what I was saying earlier, where I've known people who they acquired all this knowledge, but then there was something that sparked within them. There was a peak of curiosity. There was something that was like, this just can't be it. Like what I'm reading, there's a lot of depth here. There's a lot of knowledge. This helps bring some understanding, but yet I still can't put my finger on it. And to think about that whole idea of how faith is really our curiosity. To think and believe that there's more, or that there's something different. What are some of the things that you guys do to intentionally stay curious?
I'm always looking for something new to look for, like study, or just kind of throw myself down into a rabbit hole of. So I've been like studying just American history, like kind of like American CIA history.
Okay.
So I started like right after the 50s, and then I've been studying all the way up till now.
Okay.
And I got curious about that because I'm like, you know what? I just need something new to clean my mind, just like not clean like my mind, but just something to shove into my head so I'm not bored, so that I have something to think about. And then I finished that study like a few days ago, and I just stayed so curious about it because it's like it's something new. So always try to find something new.
Yeah.
Always try to find something different.
Yeah.
And don't always stay in the same area. Go outside your comfort zone, because that's how you can truly stay curious, and that's how you can truly stay intact with yourself.
And curiosity, when you're doing those types of things, you're practicing and you're kind of experimenting with it, and you're learning what works, what doesn't. Oh, that's not the response I want, just like what you were talking about earlier. Yeah. And so, yeah, I love that, Jaiden. I mean, what about you, Jesus?
Yeah, I mean, just the concept that you mentioned about how faith really is curiosity, I think it is, because it's opening yourself up to that there's something else and something else that's possible. And you want to explore that to see, because just like we do as children and as we grow, we're always still exploring. We're trying to figure out, we're testing it. Somebody says something, and then we test to see, is that really what it is? You know?
Yeah.
And that's exactly what it is. We do that with God. If God's like, hey, go here, then you're like, okay, is it really like that? Let me do this. Let me explore and see what's going on here. But just like him, I love to, I learn information. I get stuck in things, like easily. Like with work, for instance, like I was doing some interviews and stuff like that, and I was looking at different I was looking at different questions for the interview, because I'm like, let me switch up my questions that I had before. And so I was going through, and then I got caught up on some technical stuff that I was going over VPNs, and then understanding some delay stuff protocol with having to do with like telecommunication stuff. And I'm just like, okay, but it was great because I'm like, oh yeah, let me read on this right now. And I love to learn, and I love to understand things more. And sometimes I'll hear different words or terms that are thrown out from, it could be any industry, but sometimes it'll be like, oh, let me look into that a little bit, and just let me understand a little bit more about what this thing there, and it's just, it's fun. Why? Because I also like to have conversation. So it's like when I learn and I grow in those things, now I can also have conversation about those things because I've learned it and I have an understanding of it. And I'm like, dude, I know what you're talking about. Like, it's like
kind of like it makes it more easy to kind of like spark up conversation with everyone, especially for my age, because it's like I study like all these things that are in the past, and like whenever I find someone that has the same like knowledge of a certain time period, I'm like, awesome, now we can talk for like an hour about this. And it's always just so fun because I'm like, okay, well now I have more things to talk about. So if I ever hear anyone talking about this and they like invite me over to come and talk, then I'll be like, okay, sure, let me come over and see what I can add to the conversation. And I think that that's another reason why it's important to have knowledge, so that you can actually just like enjoy some conversations, not be in the
you can actually be engaged, dialed in, be included. I think you were talking about, and maybe we can kind of just see how this goes, but you were talking about looking at your system, so like the questions and part of the interview process. It made me think, for some of us, I know in my life, and then even maybe for those who are watching or listening, we're going through life and we're going through the opportunities and the ebb and flows and different things. And then there are some things that are being produced that aren't giving us the results that we want. When in reality, then that's where curiosity, faith, all these different things, like if you're doing stuff and it's not working and you keep finding yourself going back into the same thing and it's not producing the results you want, then you've got to change something.
Exactly.
So then you've got to acquire more knowledge, but then have that faith to be like, hey, is there a different direction I can go with this? Is there a different way of looking at it? The whole idea that I love is that knowledge is really of no value unless you actually start putting things into action.
Yeah.
But that's part of it. It's being the painter with and having a canvas and being okay with making new strokes over stuff that you've painted.
Yeah. Yeah. And like you said, it's also understanding that because you're not getting the results you want, then the reality is and sometimes it's I think it's just sometimes like it's how it's presented. So like sometimes you're doing things and you're doing like you're following certain instructions. You're like, dude, I'm doing everything I'm supposed to do. Why is it not still happening this way? Why is the outcome not still going in my favor? Why is this still not working? You know, and it's really like because there must be something else behind it.
Yeah.
There must be something I'm missing.
Yeah.
You know, it's just like in my field, like I deal with, you know, software and technology and like doing troubleshooting and stuff like that. And the reality is like, we always look at it like there's always a solution. There's always something. And if we can't see it, then there's something else. It's basically just a matter of you have to dive deeper. Because ultimately it's like, okay, yeah, you uncovered that and there was nothing there. Then check somewhere else. Yeah. Check over here. Check here, right? Like, something is causing this, you know, and that's why you're not getting the outcome you want. So that's kind of what it is, where you, like you said, you don't become content in that. You instead you say, hey, I want to find some type of solution.
Yeah.
And the faith is the motivator to say, there is a solution here. I know there is. I know God has that, or I believe there is. And so that's what keeps the drive going to bring about some change instead of being okay or staying with that mundane routine.
And faith is what actually will help make it personal.
Exactly.
Because as a person who loves knowledge, it's easy to look at someone's life and look at what rewards or what things they're producing, and then think, ooh, I can take this same system
exactly
and put it for myself, when in reality, I'll be the first to tell you that just implementing someone's system or a process that I've seen into my life will do jack squat unless it actually becomes personal.
Yeah, that's right.
And so I think that's the other part of it. It's the idea that with what God has when it comes to faith and knowledge, for each of us, there are going to be systems and there are going to be remnants and things that look very similar. But your journey of faith and knowledge and how it's implemented and worked out for your purpose in your life is going to be completely different than mine.
That's right.
And so I can use the knowledge and the faith that you've worked through to help me gain understanding and help me believe on my own side.
That's right. Yeah, 100%.
You know, but I can't expect, and I think that's the part of it where the knowledge comes in and we deceive ourselves to thinking, but I've done this. I took this 6-step process, or I bought this course, or I did this, or I'm getting into the word, but yet it hasn't gotten to so personal and we haven't come face to face with some of our own selfishness and our own downfalls and our own shortcomings to understand that those are the things that need to be shifted in our knowledge.
Oh my goodness. No, and just to touch on that though, it's almost like saying Jesus went into the wilderness, fasted 40 days, 40 nights, came out, and the power of the Spirit went. And so it's like, hey guys, we just need to go to the wilderness. We're going to go there 40 days, 40 nights. And and then we'll come back and we'll be in the power of the Spirit.
I'm not going to eat.
And it's like, no. That's not why. It wasn't just that.
Yeah.
And I think actually when you, from even what you're saying, it's like, there's a lot of actual, I would even say, even in the kingdom, like there's a lot of people that preach what they did to say, you need to do this. And it's actually not true. You know, it's like the disciples saying, hey guys, just do exactly what I did for the last 3 years with Jesus.
Yeah. It's kind of like cheating on a test. Like that's basically what it's like. It's like, hey,
I've never done that, Jaiden. I don't know what you're talking about. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah, no, it's like you cheat on a test and your answers are the exact same as the other person. But what are you learning from that?
Yeah.
Nothing. Because you just took all that information that someone else learned and you just copied it down. So that's kind of like what you were saying.
Right.
You have to have your own story. You have to do your own questions.
Yeah.
Your faith has to bring you to the understanding.
You have to develop your own style.
And I love that. the whole idea of us working through these things,
Yeah.
applying the knowledge, using faith, creating habits,
Yeah.
picking up systems, but yet ultimately when you get down to the bottom of it, it has to be owned.
Yeah.
It has to be personal, because that's when the value now comes in.
Yeah.
And that's when the full understanding begins to take place.
Yes.
You know, I love seeing people who have wrestled, journeyed through their process of taking knowledge and gaining understanding with faith, and then how it now becomes, because when it becomes personal, now nothing and no one will take it away.
Yeah. Ultimately, our journey and what God has called us to do and the faith that we are to exhibit is really unique to who we are, you know? And so like, there really is no cookie cutter way of getting to that place of faith.
That's so good.
Know, and growing your faith and building your faith. Like ultimately it's like you spend time with him, you connect with him, and always believe and look to him with any situation you encounter, because it really reminds me of there's the scripture in Joshua 1:8 where it says, you know, this book of the law shall not depart from your mouth. We shall meditate in it day and night. And then it talks about how you should do according to what was done.
Right.
And so even when God was speaking to Joshua, he told him that you're going to do just like Moses, but you're not going to do what Moses did. But the reality is what you're going to do is you're going to follow what I say.
Yeah.
You're going to do it like he did it, which is he looked to me, he followed what I say. And then that's how he accomplished what he did. So you're just really following and you're doing it in accordance with it, but you're not doing exactly what he did.
Yeah.
And I think that's where we have to like have that clarity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that's so strong. So for all of you who are watching and listening, my heart is that you get to the place where it really does become personal, you know, for you, and you begin to then see and understand how God has been with you and walking with you in it all.
Exactly.
And that's where I love when that light bulb clicks, when that connection finally gets made to know, oh, now I understand, you know. And then the other part of it is it has to be our own personal thing, so that we take ownership, so that we understand that it's not all on our own doing. But then the other part, it's once again having conversations. It's getting yourself in places and in situations where you're able to work out your faith with fear and trembling, to work out your faith, you know, so that it doesn't just become what you know, but it actually becomes a part of who you actually are.
Yeah.
So with that, guys, Jesus, man, dude, love having you here, bro, as always.
Cool.
Yeah.
I like this episode. Thank you for coming in.
Oh,
Yeah, we'll have to have you back, because there's so many things we could always talk about, and you are family, man, and so we appreciate you. So yeah, for all of you guys, thanks for tuning in, thanks for watching with us. Once again, hit the subscribe, give us a like, comment, and until next time, we'll see you guys back on the Purpose Department. So
See ya.
take care.